I'm emotional. Well, thanks for coming, first of all. I don't know if you are following Espionage or if you are following the major hacker conferences around the world. Since the beginning of this year, we started to produce comic books like this. And online on Espionage, you can find our comics. What is the comic related to this topic? Actually, it is related to much. Usually, when we have a sort of presentation or a seminar somewhere of a certain importance, we also produce a comic which is something which goes together with the presentation, and to fully understand the presentation and what we want to transmit to you, it's better that you read also the comic. The comic are a little bit technical, but not too much, so everybody, even the business manager, can understand. And particularly for this conference, we produced a comic based on espionage activities. Okay, it's a little bit science fiction comics, but if you can easily substitute the science fiction elements with elements that are already present nowadays. And you can get one copy, actually 4 copies of this comic with the autograph of the producers, which is me and him. No, but for this number, actually, we were having a lot of help from 2 persons, which are actually very much important. This is the cover of our next comic, and for you guys attending this presentation, there will be a CD with the PDF file. You can get it for free. Wow. And you have basically 2 reasons to read such comic. The reason it is that in this particular episode, we have Fyodor, which is Nmap author, and HITB founder, Lee Dog. They helped in the storyboard, so they were actively participating in producing the comic, and basically they are the 2 heroes of the story. So this is a good reason why to read the comics. But you also have another good reason, that you can see my ass in the comics. And the ladies, they love it, usually. Okay. Actually, it's only in the first episode. Later on, people, they told me, come on, you can't do such stuff. So this episode, it is more serious without naked flesh. Excuse me? In the next episode, there will be a social engineer of French origin, absolutely naked, will be spanked by the heroine which we have. Evil Angelica, the name of the lady. Okay. Now, I passed the microphone, actually, virtually, to Fabio, which will continue with the presentation.
Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is watch a little bit of a movie which is called Black Hawk Down. I don't know how many of you people saw it already. There is a very good reason, which is a visual definition of asymmetry. So now you see it, and then we get to the talk.
Sir, the vehicle has stopped.
So this is the real deal. He's sure this time.
He sounds scared shitless.
Good, that's all it is.
All units, Irene. I say again, Irene.
Check him ready. Mark 5-1, fight up. Star 4-1 on the right.
Irene!
This was a DVX file or what?
I don't know. Anyway, whatever. So, I don't know if you caught the message of this little piece of the movie. So
Never fly on helicopter.
Whatever. Besides, never fly an helicopter without a patent. But the thing is, you saw that there is the biggest army in the world, billions of dollars spent in intelligence, big espionage activities, satellites, Delta Force with very expensive training, everything. And then you have on the other side probably the cost of the little kid's his own life and a couple of dollars a day to eat. And this little kid with this couple of dollars a day to eat and a satellite phone, okay, there is the phone bill, maybe if they pay it. But this little kid just totally destroyed the hopes of victory of this army in this specific example. So this is what asymmetry is in this field. I'm talking about, of course, what we're talking about now, which is intelligence, fighting, cyber war, whatever. Asymmetry is just this, having a big, complicated, expensive, costing a lot of money on the taxpayers and everything. On one side, and on the other side you have, whatever you can do. Like, definition of asymmetry is also, you use whatever you have in hand. You can use a fork to eat or to kill somebody. To kill somebody is an asymmetric way to use it, okay? It's just unconventional way to use it. So, I'm gonna say now some things that they are like, can look like obvious to everybody, but they must be said just to understand what is the background of the activities, the intelligence activities of today and how things are evolving in this field, either for the purpose of law enforcement or to fight for the good against the evil, or just to get more money and for profit, only for mere money and profit. So we're going to talk about all the new threats, industrial espionage and state-sponsored espionage, which in many cases is the same thing, okay? Because a lot of countries, they finance intelligence agencies also to work for the industry, just to back up their own economy. Italy is not one of those, unfortunately. So. And then we have cyber defense methodology. Okay, we're going to say just a little bit about this because we don't have enough time, and counterattacks, etc. So, this is one of the obvious things. I mean, it looks like obvious. Everybody says that, after September 11, everybody talks about, oh, there is September 11, everything changed, and all this type of things. So, the fact is, I'm in the business of intelligence I've been since 1985, and I can tell you that in actual fact, everything changed. Because before, when there was the Iron Curtain, and I was there for 5 years when there was the Iron Curtain, there was the big evil, which was the Soviet Union, and there was enough. But the most of the money went into government activities. Then after the Iron Curtain, there was a little attention on security. I mean, security wasn't a big deal. Nobody was spending too much money for it. Also because you can never demonstrate to top management or to anybody how much money you're going to save with security measures. You're going to just know it when you have a security breach. So when you lose some money, you say, shit, I lost some money. But if you don't lose them, there is no way to tell that you're going to lose that much money. So you cannot demonstrate how useful it is, or that you need to work on security for any reason. So you also have Microsoft is a good example of that, as I was talking with some Microsoft guy today also. I mean, now they're putting a big attention on security because there is a lot of hacker activity and a lot of security breaches on the operating system and on the application level. But when it was born, can anybody say that it was security oriented as an operating system? Of course not, otherwise we wouldn't have all these problems right now. So, now, a big thing that nobody ever talks really about industrial espionage. I mean, it is something you read in books maybe, but there is no real concern about it. It's like an invisible phantom, you know, going. You talk about just amongst top managers or, you know, between security managers of corporations or with the Justice Department or things like that. But there is no public talk about it. And the reason why is because the industry can lose its image for it. So that's a big deal for the industry. Sometimes they don't even, industry doesn't even report to the police or report to anybody that they had a security breach, unless somebody discloses it, which is, you know, somebody external discloses it, because it can be bad for business. So it's better to support a big security breach and risk your customers, you know, well-being or financial well-being. And it's better that than report and make people know or alert them that there is a problem. So you have credit card companies. I worked for many years for a big credit card corporation, and I remember perfectly having tons of security breaches and problems, you know, every day. But none of this, they were all treated very confidentially. You know, like, you know, this is something strategic. You cannot talk about it. You cannot talk about fraud. Fraud is a strategic matter. It's a competitive matter. And then you have the T-Mobile thing, which Roberto is going to talk about later. And then there is this thing which I called K. I cannot actually mention this company, but I can describe it to you. K stands for the first letter of a huge American corporation dealing with security. This huge American corporation dealing with security and with due diligences, and they also have some people in Iraq. Actually, some of their people, they do the guarding of the stations in Iraq for American soldiers. I mean, they are private people, you know, with all these guns and everything. And this big corporation, which was involved in a big industrial espionage matter last year and the year before, was, you know, totally breaking into, and all their database was taken by some people, which nobody knows who they are. And this big database of about 350 gigabytes zipped, it was used against them, but did you ever hear, I mean, did you see in the newspaper something about it? I mean, this corporation is still in business, is still working, customers are still trusting this corporation, just because nobody knows that this thing happened, except the actors that are involved in it, and a few other people like me, for example.
And you now?
Yeah, but you don't know the name. Well, you can look it up. The second letter is R. So, this is the thing. I mean, this presentation, the beginning was made by another person, so can anybody say what this picture is standing for here? I don't know. I mean, that's why I'm asking you. Somebody put it there. Anyway, just jokes apart. Don't look at the picture. So, what is industrial espionage? Industrial espionage is, here is said is the illegal acquisition of intellectual property and trade secrets. In other words, theft. But actually, what you're looking for when you're doing industrial espionage is specific secrets, specific things, which it's not like stealing like a Picasso or something like that. You know, think about a chemical corporation, which spends tens of years maybe, sometimes. I mean, I know in the aerospace industry, a project lasts for 10, 15 years before it's completed for an helicopter, for example. So you do a lot of research on this little formula for a pill for the headache, or to just, you know, relieve a sore throat, and or for AIDS or whatever. And you kill a lot of animals doing that, because, you know, you need to experiment on animals, and maybe sometimes you experiment it also on human beings secretly. Anyway, you have to have a huge setup and a lot of money to do that research. And then after many years, you have this little formula which stays in a floppy disk. Okay, if you know what the target is and who are the people working on this thing, and you can get this formula, you saved all this money. So you can get competitive against this chemical corporation, for example. And there are a lot of ways to do that, and not only hacking, but hacking is a part of it, and is becoming a big part of it nowadays, just because everything is linked, everything is handled by information systems, especially in the countries that do this type of researches, like the Western countries. So, now, this is, since 1990s, Western intelligence agencies on this. I mean, there are a lot of open source examples of this, like for example, the Echelon network, which was uncovered by the Omega Foundation, which was led by a British guy many years back, I think in 1996, which was, you know, what Echelon is. I mean, it was this big espionage network, which was said to be used to protect the G7 countries from, actually mostly the English-speaking countries, because the members of this network were just USA, Canada, UK, New Zealand and Australia. And you know how this thing worked. I mean, they just said that they were getting all the information, storing them, and then searching through them. And they had all these people looking through this information when there was no technology. Then, as the technology got better, they got software to search through these things for keywords, for all these type of things. And everybody thinks that it is, you know, it was to protect the Western world. In actual fact, there are this type of network and others. They were mainly used to exploit the research and vulnerabilities of other countries not part of that array. A commercial capability, like for example having a new contract in a new country for billions of dollars, finding new oil somewhere, crude oil, or other things like that, new research on military equipment, like for example airplanes or helicopters. So I can give you some examples also of this, which are different from the Echelon networks. For example, here we mention Israel. So Israel is a country which is very involved with, has a very high security awareness, all the population has, and also the corporations. And a lot of the research that has been done for a lot of instruments, like for companies that work for they come from Israel. I mean, I don't know if some of you ever worked in the industry and have ever been approached by an Israeli company. Most of them deal with security. So security software, security hardware, security encryption, anti-fraud system. And for example, in the anti-fraud system, there are a couple of companies, which I'm not, of course, going to mention the name, in the lawful interception business and fraud management business, which they deal, for example, with phone traffic, with CDRs, you know, they are the records of the phone traffic, and with interception of voice, data and everything. And these companies, most of the time, they have been known to go and propose contracts which were totally unbelievable. For example, they gave 95% of discount. So can you imagine how can they survive with 95% of discount? They probably were sponsored, somebody could say, and they probably are, in fact. Some of these companies' software and hardware have been found in the past to be backdoored, and that's, I mean, they think about their national security, and I can understand their point of view, but that's what was happening. I wish I could tell you what the companies were, but you know, it's not good. So we have business intelligence is a big word. There are a lot of tools which are being used for business intelligence, like for example autonomy is a big tool which is being used also by the Department of Defense of the United States, and other business intelligence tools. There is an Italian one, there is a French one, there is an Israeli one. And mainly what they do is search intelligence data like the web. So the web is their main target. And try to sort information so they can alert you before, you know, you find with Google the thing that something is happening and something has been published. The effectiveness of this alone is not that much, because I mean, you know the thing just 5 minutes before you would have known it anyway with looking in Google. You have automatic alerts, so that's maybe what's helping, but alone this thing is not actually helping in competitiveness. So, just before getting to the topic, we need to say one thing, that when you're dealing nowadays with these subjects, intelligence and competitive intelligence and corporations, situational awareness is the key word. So you need to, I mean, I just can give you an example with fraud. Okay, there is. I've been working for some corporations where, at the beginning, they were saying, "Oh, I have no security problem. I mean, I have no fraud. I have nothing." I mean, the problem is that you go to, as I was telling you before, you know, fraud and things like that, negative things. They are competitive matters, you know, strategic. So it's bad to say that you have them. But it's even worse to not know that you have them. You know, maybe you don't tell it, but if you don't even know it, that's becoming really worrying. And some of these companies prefer not to know it, so they can say that they don't have it, unless you know, instead of handling it. And a good example was in a big telecommunication operator about 6-7 years ago, where they said that they had no telephone fraud. In actual fact, they were not detecting it. They had no fraud management system. So there was a good reason to say that they didn't have it, just they didn't have the statistic for it. So, I mean, this you can read afterwards, this, you know, philosophy stuff, you know, Sun Tzu and Napoleon Bonaparte. Just to tell you that sometimes it's not how big you are, but how smart you are that makes the difference. Okay, so this is another important thing. When you are dealing in this business, when you're working in this business, like doing competitive intelligence, which is not illegal to do competitive intelligence if you do it in the right way, but there is a very fine line, and it's difficult sometimes to not cross this line. So everybody needs to be really careful when they do it. Okay, so talking about information systems or IT systems, a lot of attack methodologies that they are being used nowadays, and some of these have started also a few years back, but they all exploded after this famous 2001 September 11. They are this. So there have been a very high growth of botnets and autonomous agents being built just to collect data and send them to a single source. Then you have the classical social engineering thing, exploiting human vulnerabilities, and you wouldn't, I mean, whoever of you did the social engineering before, you know how vulnerable is the human brain. It's worse than any type of operating system you've ever had. I mean, you just need to cuddle the human a little bit and he would tell you anything. And sometimes just to find the right way to ask him the question would lead him to tell you anything, even the most confidential or secret thing for him. Then you have the big mouth, the ones that have to demonstrate. You know, this is a psychological thing. I'm a psychologist actually, so being a big mouth is a pathology from my point of view, because you need, you know, it's a syndrome to demonstrate that you are you are capable, you know, and you're always comparing yourself with somebody which is near you, so you need to tell your things always, and sometimes you tell these things too loud and too much. Then there is information leakage. Sorry? Okay, I thought somebody talked. Information leakage and data manipulation, and then you have open source grading, which we were talking about before. Sometimes in open source you do find some very interesting things, just because somebody put them there by mistake. Like, for example, I remember in another company, they published on the website all the list of their top key people, you know, top managers and the key people, which was, you know, the strategic people, with all their email addresses and telephone numbers, name of the spouse, etc., etc. It was very interesting, actually. And then you have the employees' exploitation. So besides the home PC compromission, you know that most of the employees, they take the work at home. So sometimes you don't get to the company, you get to their home. And okay, mailbox hijacking, but the employees' exploitation also is a social engineering thing, because you find the disgruntled employees, and a disgruntled employee would do anything just to get even. Okay, and that's the most dangerous type of human in a company. Okay, so here we have a very complicated thing. you have state. The state must spend a lot of money and justify all the money that is spent. So they build all these big teams of analysts and people that verify the analysis of the analyst and people that translate the verification of the analysis of the analyst. And then all this big complicated thing which costs a lot of money. And then you have this very simple thing. So this is the modern espionage process flow. This is a thing that happens, is being done by groups of people, which actually, what I forgot to tell you is that recently, in the last 4 years, there was a big growth of organizations, asymmetric of organizations, like people, getting together and networking together, just with the purpose of stealing information and selling them to the best buyer. So if you find the correct, if you are in a big corporation and you want to know what your competitor does, if you know one of these organizations or one of these people that connect you to these organizations, you can actually get it, provided that you have the budget to pay them. And in many cases, as far as I know, they are also very effective. So you have once you know what the target is, you have the open source intelligence gathering. This is how these organizations work. Then you have the target definition and acquisition. What do you mean, target definition and acquisition? You have, for example, I don't know, the chemical industry we were talking about before. So you need to know that this chemical industry is a multinational corporation with maybe 200,000 employees and, I don't know, 100 sites around the world. So what you need is that little formula. So where is that little formula being produced? So you need to know who are the people working on research on this formula. They usually publish, articles or white papers or things like that. A lot of times they go to conferences like this one, on the chemical business, of course. And often they leave their business card, and you just need to have their business card. If you know who the person is, and in their business card you can find all the data you need to exploit the thing. Then you do the target vulnerability assessment and profiling. Let's say that the site that you need to target is in Japan. Okay, so you need somebody that can read Japanese, and you need to do a vulnerability assessment of the site to see how you can get in where these people leave the data. Then you do exploit generation. So this is a process flow. You have a team that does exploit generation. You say, okay, I have this thing, I have these vulnerabilities, I don't have exploits. Can you do them for me? Yes. And they sell them to these people. Then they do the attack infrastructure setup, which means you cannot attack it from your own site. You need to have encrypted file servers in another country where you don't have a rogatory from the country where you are doing the crime, where you're actually, committing the crime. So if Japan is the country, for example, I'm just doing an example with Japan. If Japan is the country, you need not to have, this server in Japan. Otherwise, they would, the police, just in case, would go there and take it and do a forensic analysis on it and maybe find you. So you need to find encrypted servers somewhere else. You need to find shells. Maybe you already have the setup, but you need to be sure that this setup is just tailor-made for that target. And setup, what does it mean? For example, in the example of Japan, if you have this chemical corporation, okay, the last thing you wanna have is that they imagine that you, as the competitor, are trying to get information from them, okay, that you are the one that is trying to steal this thing. So you need to make it look like that somebody else is doing it. So you need to find who else is interested in them, who else doesn't like them, and then just make sure that whatever activity you do is blamed on them. So you need to set up fake communications and, maybe some denial of service coming from somewhere else. I don't know, things like that. It changes every time from target to target, as far as I understood from whoever is doing these things. And then you have the target exploitation. When you exploit the target, there are two different things that happen in this case. Either you just get all the information and then you shut it down, or you just set up a link to get the information until they find out that there is a problem and they shut it down. Or you give key in hands the thing to the customer, just in case. If the customer is another big corporation, they pay you, you give them the thing key in hands. So with the passwords and usernames and everything, so they can continue the job.
I just want to add one thing. If you are involved in penetration testing, you can recognize that this scheme is really very similar to the scheme you are using when you're doing a penetration test to any company. And by the way, penetration tester must possess hacker skills, which are the skills needed to do such kind of activity.
Okay, one thing that is important to say is that, the most danger that I found in this type of problem or in this type of activity is actually coming from people doing penetration testing. Okay, so you have two types of things that are happening nowadays in the last 5, 6, 7 years. One thing is called IT outsourcing, which is the most dangerous thing that has ever happened to a company. But all the companies are doing it because they say we are saving money and we are, we have less people, because when they outsource a sector like IT, they also outsource all the people with it. So they have less cost, their balance sheet is good, so they're in the stock market, they're doing the right thing. The only problem is that they gave away all their knowledge base to somebody else. When I was working for a military corporation, I found out that, for example, the outsourcing that they were trying to outsource the IT department like everybody else was doing, and the company that was, the first in the line to get this IT thing was also was owned at 30% by the competitor, by one of the competitors of this company. So that was totally crazy. But nobody looked at it because they were just saving money at the beginning. They didn't look at the strategic problem in doing that and why this company was just making it so cheap for them to outsource their IT department. And then you have people doing penetration testing. A lot of these people, which I was telling you before, being part of these asymmetric organizations, they're actually IT experts working for companies that are doing penetration testing and vulnerability assessments. So they get access to the IT departments very easily just to assess. And it's very easy for them to have administrative privileges and to install whatever they need to install. And there are thousands of examples of this thing happened. I just found one 2 weeks ago in the company I'm working with right now. So, another thing, and then I leave the word to Roberto. So there is one specific organization, asymmetric organization, which was dealing with this type of business. I think they are in business, they've been in business for about 3-4 years. I'm talking about asymmetric organization doing intelligence gathering in very dubious legal ways and selling them to, to best offers or others. I know for sure that they started the project because at the beginning all the activity was human-based. Then they said, well, why doing it all by hand? So and they called it Skynet 1.0, taken really from the Terminator movie. That's very interesting because when I got somebody to describe it to me, they said, we got the machines that need to talk. A lot of the artificial intelligence thing is being done trying to get the machine to talk like the human, to speak the same language and everything. Look at the Aibo, for example, of Sony Corporation. I have 2 in my home of Aibos. They bark, and they try to do the dog, but in actual fact they are a machine. So their artificial intelligence is in trying to imitate the dog, but they are machines. So a machine should just be a machine, they say. So the machine should talk its own language and should live in its own universe. So what they're trying to do, which is very interesting from a scientific point of view, but very scary from another point of view, is they're building these computers, which they are exploiting, learning how to exploit the network and trying to gather automatically the right tools to speak with certain types of other machines, like finding the right protocol to speak with one application or with one machine or with one network. And once they have it developed, they want to put it, just to deploy it. And how do they deploy it? As I was telling you before, most of these people, they're working for companies which are in the IT business. So it's very easy to add a cluster or a machine to some array which is somewhere in a data center. Imagine if this is going to be deployed worldwide in a lot of corporations worldwide. What could happen? with this type of thing. I mean, it's very scary thinking about it, but it's very stimulating from an intellectual and scientific point of view. As soon as we have more data about this, we are very happy to give it to you. But as far as I know, right now they are still in the research stage. So here is the word to Roberto.
A few more examples about espionage. Actually, this is not specifically, we cannot classify it as a corporate espionage, as it was originally kind of joke done by hackers, didn't know what to do in the evenings, and they found out that it was a good thing to hack for mobile phone operators in USA. I'm talking about the T-Mobile case. It was hitting the news a few months ago, and it is related to a case which happened in 2003. By the end of 2003, a group of hackers breached using a web application flow into the T-Mobile management system that T-Mobile was supplying to the resellers. Through such system, they got enough rights to collect emails, for example, and password of the T-Mobile users, so they could basically spy the hundreds of thousands of customers of T-Mobile, and this was going on for more than 1 year. Maybe you heard about the leakage also of the telephone numbers contained in Paris Hilton mobile phone. This is also connected to such case. What is not public, actually, it is that the hacker eventually, they discovered that one NSA guy or FBI guy, CIA guy, sorry, was using the T-Mobile email just to bounce his work email from the work to his home. How good. In this way, his email box was sniffed by the hackers, was surveyed by the hackers. They got a sample of classified documents. And once they understood that this guy was from CIA, they even found a flaw in the telephone voicemail system, which allowed them even to snoop what was going on in the voicemail box, basically hearing the conversation left by somebody else toward this CIA guy. The nice thing it is, even if it was not a case of corporate-sponsored espionage, the T-Mobile subscribers' data, they were basically sold on internet, and a lot of different services that were available for people who wanted, just for example, knowing a telephone number, who was behind this telephone number, or for example, knowing the name of a person, getting access to his telephone number, even having copies of the content of the email boxes. Zone H in this case was informed, as we always have a neutral approach. We have very good relationship with institution, government institution, even police department, as well as we have very good relationship with the hacker and cracker community. We prefer to keep our neutral status so that both of the parties are trusting us, and this way we can collect more information about vulnerabilities, the process of violating system, new processes, building up statistics which are later on available to the public. This is basically Zone H mission. Another interesting case was a case of the Israeli Trojan horse. It was a big scandal, and this was pure corporate espionage, about a group of companies and leading people within such companies that they were acting in such way that they were capable to infect competitors' computers with specially crafted Trojans, so to exploit the competitor system for intelligence, for business intelligence purposes. Again, this is not a very old stuff. Probably it's related to something that happened 2 or 3 months ago, just before the summer. If I suggest you to go on the internet and look just for Israel Trojan, and you will find immediately a lot of articles, interesting articles about this case. Another very good case study, which I know very well because it was hit in my country, Italy, it is related to the Chinese Trojan attacks. Here we are mentioning also that several American corporations got compromised in the last year by Trojan attacks. I would also add several UK corporations. Basically, all the West recently got hit by a wave, a huge wave, waves of Trojan attacks, mostly coming from China. The purpose was to infect computer to get data. I was talking also with one of the major guy in the Korean CERT, and they had the same thing happening against their servers. What they didn't know, it was if coming from China or from North Korea, because North Korea it's usually using the Chinese lines. But in Italy we had a very good example about one of the, we are the fashion country. Okay, there are also the French, but we like to say, at least for shoes, Italy is very well known in the world. And the industry got severely hit by a wave of attacks. Suddenly the Italian companies understood that something was wrong. Chinese companies, they were usually sending somebody with a camera as soon as I'm talking about things of the past. When a new model of shoe was coming out, it was presented to the public, somebody was coming, even from Japan, to take the picture, and then they were going back home and they were doing the same model or trying to just arrange it a little bit different. But this was the way they were producing. Same for the car factories, for example. They started copies and then eventually they introduced innovation. Then they realized, the Italian companies, that they had a staggering reduction in the sales activity by 60%. And then suddenly they understood that several servers of Italian companies were compromised by Chinese Trojans. The scope of such Trojans was to steal data from the servers. I'm talking about blueprints or DXF file, everything which you use to build up the model before hitting even the production line. In such way, the Chinese companies, they were able to produce the Italian product at 1/3 of the price, even before the same Italian producer was capable to produce the first piece. And you understand, you spend a lot of money in research and then somebody else is benefiting. What was the cost, a Trojan? You're using the same enemy's structure, because the Chinese, they were using the Italian infrastructures. I'm talking about IT infrastructure, I'm talking about the internet. And the only cost they had, it was the development of a Trojan. And finally, this is an example I'm proud of, because I talked about this topic for the first time in the Belua conference in Indonesia. And we were presenting the new American superpower program for war, which is called FCS, Future Combat System. It's a huge project worth $23 billion. And it is involving a lot of companies. And we were analyzing, as on age, we were thinking, America is producing a very well advanced war program based on super networks deployed on the enemy's territories. If we don't have enough money, being the enemy of America, for example, what we would do? This was the question of Zone Age. So we started to dig to try to understand how much information we could take from the open sources. And then we eventually were capable to have in our hand even the names of the person involved in every single aspect of the project, what they were specifically doing, and a personal email address, which for a hacker, it is basically the starting point. And what happened? We reproduced such topic in the DEF CON conference, in Las Vegas in July. And then right after, I was in Italy, and I got contacted by a representative of a very powerful nation. I don't want to tell you the name, but the flag has stars and stripes. And they told me, there is a ring of hackers who is violating servers of the companies who are participating in important US military programs. He didn't mention the FCS program, but I understood it immediately. Do you know anything about that? And of course we kept our neutral status and we said, well, no, we don't know anything, and even if we knew it, we weren't gonna telling you. But specifically in this case, I didn't know anything about it. But it was the confirmation that somebody was actually acting in the way we were thinking as soon as we saw the paper the first time of such a big American war program.
Okay, so, oops. Hello, okay. So just to complete the presentation, one thing that I learned from these various experiences, which it's almost like being at war. I know that I'm not able to transmit to you totally the feeling of this type of activity, because you must live it, just to know how it is. But it is like being at war, and sometimes it is also very exciting, sometimes it is very stressing. One thing that I found out is that it is totally useless to raise a wall, because, to make, like for example, firewalls, just talking about walls. Sometimes I've seen that the most vulnerable systems in a company are actually the firewalls. So exploiting the vulnerabilities of a firewall just gets you into the company, because the company thinks that after the firewall you are okay. I mean, there is the firewall, so no problem after it. Sometimes you just need to know. And that's why when you do fingerprinting and everything, what the defenses on the other side are, just to exploit them. So if you have a big door of 20 feet of metal, you just find a drill which is long enough and you drill it. So the main security measure that we know of, we found it in the ancient Egypt. So, this guy, Tutankhamun or whatever, he got all these people to build the pyramids, and then I didn't find a slide which, with all the blood and everything, but in the end he slaughtered them, he killed them all. So the good thing, if you want to be really secure, is you get your IT infrastructure and then you kill all the IT guys. But as you can't do it, and it's also illegal, so what the hell? There is another way. The other way, which is not so secure, also because then you run out of IT people and you don't have them, The other way is, and the most effective way that I found, is not to raise walls, but it's just to put good ears, just to be able to listen, to monitor, to capture the data. So if you can detect a problem and be alerted for it, good. If you cannot detect it because it's a new thing, at least you have it recorded. So you can find it when you find out that you actually had a problem, and you can do your forensic analysis, and you can go back, you can backtrack and find the solution for that, and maybe also find the culprit. So logging and listening, that's the most effective way I found to handle this thing. And then the other thing is just not, so you don't have to kill everybody, just to make sure that at least you pound in the head of people not to talk about, the security measures you have in place, not to say what type of firewalls you have, not, the naming policy, like not call the machines FW, blah, 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 or, DMZ, etc., and all these type of things. So I hope this was a little of help. If you need some more details about these things, of course, not too in-depth details, but whatever, we can just contact us afterwards. And so another thing is, once you get a good defense mechanism in place, like you spread terror around the IT guys and other people not to reveal what you have in place. And once you can log, you have the logging capability to at least listen to all the information, there is a way to counterattack. But this type of methodology, which is injected interception, and which is actually being used very often and very successfully in the European countries right now, in investigations and everything. The only thing is that this type of activity requires you to cooperate with the Justice Department and with police forces, because you need to have a lawful interception infrastructure in place, like I was saying last year here at Hack in the Box. And this lawful interception infrastructure is the one that is able to actually actively do this type of things, like, for example, inject a packet and do automatically a lot of things that a hacker would do, but with a whole infrastructure which is underneath the whole activity of the police forces and law enforcement agencies. So, providing that you are, you want to cooperate with the law enforcement agencies in handling a problem you have, because you don't think it is a strategic matter. Remember that every time you cooperate with the police agency on a strategic matter of your company, the press will always know about it. So you can be sure that the thing will go on the newspapers.
Now, before finishing, can you tell me what is this? I don't hear you. Network card. Who told it? Raise your hand. There. Please tell me, why did you say this is a network card? Because you saw it before? Okay, so you recognize it by the shape, right? Eventually you will plug it in your PC and you see if it works. If it's having the traffic flooding your PC or not. And that's it. This is all the way you are recognizing this piece of equipment as a network card? I mean, can you prove me this is a network card? No, okay. Let's say you go to a shop and you buy a network card. And then you have in your hand the network card. Can you prove me this is a network card?
Or it's only a network card.
Or it's only a network card? No, you can't, because you trust the shape and you know what this thing does, because you read the specification. What is the point? We are talking about espionage, Trojans, but guys, nobody ever thought about what you have in your hardware. I mean, you can reverse engineer software, but it's really difficult to reverse engineer hardware. For me, this network card could have, hypothetically, computational capability and could even execute some operations if properly instructed from remote. How would I know? It's not possible. It would be impossible not to know it, because you can't reverse engineering. And actually the law, it's helping in such way the bad guys, in the sense that if in any network appliance would ever be present some spying system, the law is telling you that if you do reverse engineering, you're breaching the law, therefore you go in trouble. And you can see, for example, what happened at the end of July at the Black Hat conference in Las Vegas. The guy who was raising the problem with the Cisco flow got immediately raided by the agents and questioned about illegal practice of reverse engineering. Now, did you thought it before or not that the problem might not be in the software but might be in the hardware? We are all blindly buying the hardware, but we don't know what is it exactly. This is a provocation, of course. I don't want to say this is happening. But if I was a spy and I had my hand on any production line of such equipment, I would definitely think to do something like that. And if you read the first episode of our comic book, it's actually based on a similar fact. And before finishing, talking about comics, we invite you now at the end of the presentation to get the copy of your own CD, which is signed in original by us, by Litog, and by Fyodor. And then it will be auctioned also 4 t-shirts, like this one, comic t-shirts, signed in original, and 4 copies, color-printed copies, signed in original by the authors, and because it is auctioned for charity, we invite you for a good bid. Thank you very much for the